Hi, my name is Angel. Welcome back to my channel. We have a lot to talk about today because somehow I read 25 books in March, which I literally have never done except for last October. I read 25 books. It is the most amount of books that I've ever read in 1 month, and I don't know how I did it. I was very motivated. So grab a drink, grab a snack, and let's just get right into it. So starting off, I have a lot of books that I read in reading vlogs in March, so I'm just kind of gonna speed run those because I don't want to be repeating myself over and over, but all of those vlogs will be linked in the description if you guys want to go and watch like my full thoughts on any of these books. So first of all, I read the New York Times best horror list of 2023. So I had, I think, 7 books in that video. So first off, for that video, I read The Sanctuary by Gustavo Eduardo Abrevaya, and I gave that 2.5 stars. That book follows a couple who is driving along this really deserted stretch of highway. Their car breaks down and they find sanctuary in a nearby town, but that town has some dark and sinister things going on. Next, I read Human Sacrifices by Maria Fernanda and Puero. I gave that collection 4 stars. It's a short story collection, and it is brutal and hard to read at times, but the writing is absolutely beautiful, and I will definitely be picking up another book by that author. I would highly recommend that. The next book that I read for that video was The Salt Grows Heavy by Cassandra Khaw, which I gave 3.5 stars. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. That story follows a mermaid and a genderless plague doctor going on this journey in this kind of post-apocalyptic world, fantasy world. I really enjoyed it. 3.5 stars, obviously. Then I read Silver Nitrate by Silvia Moreno Garcia. That one I gave 2 stars. I really did not like it. I don't really want to talk about it, but the story follows 2 main characters who are best friends, and they kind of get somehow roped into this thing with this cursed film that never got filmed to completion, so now they are kind of helping the director go back and complete that film and just dealing with a lot of occult stuff. The next one was Lone Women by Victor Laval. This follows a woman named Adelaide in the year 1915. She travels to Montana to start a homestead there, and a lot of crazy things happen. I gave it 4.5 stars. I really loved it. I will definitely be reading more from Victor Laval. This is my first book by him, but I'm really excited because I have some of his other books on my TBR, so I'm really happy and confident that I will love those now. And the last book for this reading vlog was The Insatiable Volt Sisters by Rachel Eve Moulton. This story follows 2 sisters that grew up on this island when they were younger, and then in the present day, they're much older. One of them now lives off island and has to return home because their father has died, and they start to learn a lot more about the history of the island and why she left as a child. I gave that story 4 stars, and that was it for the New York Times Best Horror Books of 2023. The next reading vlog was my body horror reading vlog, which was my subgenre for my subgenre series. If you guys don't know, I will be reading a different horror subgenre each month of this year and doing a vlog about it. So obviously March was body horror. In that I read The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka, which is a classic, and it is about this man who wakes up one day to find that he has turned into a beetle. I gave it 5 stars. I really liked the writing. Then I read Wilder Girls by Rory Power, which follows 3 young girls at this school for girls, which is on an isolated island that gets plagued by a mysterious disease. So they are kind of quarantined there, and they start to learn more about what this disease is and whether or not help is actually coming for them. I gave that one 5 stars as well. And then I didn't read this in the vlog, but it goes along with this book, so I just want to throw it in there. The author actually came out with a short story that kind of is a prequel. It's 26 pages. It is called What We Did While You Were Gone, and it is about the girls' lives before this disease came and hit them. We get a different point of view in that one, and we get to see some different sides of some of the other characters. Overall, I gave it 3 stars just because it is so short. It just kind of made me wish that we had like a long full-length prequel about these girls back when they were happy and had normal lives. And I had another 5-star in that video, and that was House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland. This is kind of like a dark fairy tale type of vibe. We have these 3 sisters who disappeared mysteriously when they were children, came back with no memory of where they were or what happened. Now they are adults and one of the sisters goes missing again, so they search for her and start to uncover some of the mystery of what happened to them as children. I really loved it. Obviously I gave it 5 stars and I think it might be a new all-time favorite for me. Also in that video I read The Cipher by Kathy Koja, which I gave 3 stars. This story follows 2 primary characters who find this like mysterious magical kind of living black hole on the floor of a storage room in their building, and just kind of descends into madness. It's a story of obsession, and it really made my brain feel very strange. I don't know. I literally finished that book and then I went to go watch a movie with my boyfriend and he was like, oh, how about this? And he pulled up some like weird horror movie, which normally is my thing, but that book like melted my brain and I was like, I can't do any more weirdness right now. So that was that one. Then I read Books of Blood Volume 1 by Clive Barker. I gave it 3.5 stars. This is a short story collection and my favorite story in it was Pig Blood Blues. And the last book that I read for that reading vlog was Frankenstein, which I have read before, so this was a reread for me. Really enjoyed it and I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. Then in March I read 2 books for my new releases reading vlog, my Q1 new releases. Those 2 books were Among the Living by Tim Levin, which is a horror story about this group of people that goes into a cave and they kind of unearth an ancient evil power thing down there. Overall, I gave it 3.5 stars. And then I read The House of Last Resort by Christopher Golden, which is about this couple that moves to Italy. They buy this home and the home has a really dark history. It was owned by the church and the priests used to do crazy things there, and they kind of learn about what's going on. It's a demon possession, demon exorcism story, and I gave it 4 stars. That was my speed run of everything that I've read in vlogs in March. Once again, all those vlogs will be linked down below, but now we're gonna get into everything else that I read just on the side for my own pleasure and not for videos. And as usual, we will start with the lowest rated and work our way up to the highest rated. So my lowest rated book, I gave it 1.5 stars, and I'm really sad by because it was a 5-star prediction. I was so convinced I was going to love this book and I didn't. I wrote a whole long rant about this book on Goodreads if you guys want to go and read it, but this book is Lakewood by Megan Giddings. So what I knew about this book going in was that it was a horror with some sci-fi elements dealing with medical experiments, some government research facility, and that it had social commentary. And the book, the edition that I had on the cover, it compares itself to Jordan Peele's Get Out, which I feel like should be a crime because it, absolutely not. My main issue with this book is I feel like absolutely nothing happened. We had kind of the same 3 subsequent events that would happen over and over and over again, but then the story never actually went anywhere. This book actually put me to sleep, literally put me to sleep, like book in my hand, mid-sentence, fell asleep twice. And that has never happened to me before. And this book made it happen twice on 2 separate occasions, which I am still shocked and appalled at. I also really enjoy horror that has to do with social commentary, and I knew this book was going to deliver that, but it didn't. I feel like it didn't do it in a good way. I like when the social commentary is kind of like snuck in there and really makes you think and kind of has like abstract ideas, and it's like in your brain you're like, oh, I can compare this to this. But this book was literally like, this character did this and it was racist because of this, and I'm like, okay, you don't need to spell it out. Like, I don't know. I just didn't really enjoy that. The reason that I gave it 1.5 stars instead of just 1 star is because I did like the writing style. I did like the overall concept or idea behind the book. I just wish that the execution was better, and I'm really, really upset by it. But I do have another book by Megan Giddings on my TBR, which I will still be reading, and I hope that one goes better for me, but we will see. This one just was a flop. Now we are moving on. These next books are all 3 stars. I feel like I had a lot of 3 stars in March. The first one is Your Shadow Half Remains by Sunny Moraine. This is a new release. It is a novella, and it's an apocalyptic horror story. This takes place in a world that has been affected by a pandemic in which eye contact makes people kind of spiral into rage and just go off and kill other people with rage. So we are following a main character called Riley, and she kind of lives off on her own, does her own thing, and then all of a sudden a new neighbor moves in nearby. His name is Ellis, and they kind of develop a friendship that wants to develop into something more, but obviously they can't make eye contact with each other, but Riley has this really strong desire just to look at Ellis. So it's a very interesting story of them kind of navigating their relationship in this world and just their feelings for each other. I feel like I really liked the world and the atmosphere that this book took place in. I liked a lot of the concepts that were presented, but I feel like there were also some aspects that were kind of confusing, and I feel like I don't fully grasped everything that this book was trying to do because I don't know if it was presented in a form in which it would have been easy for me to grasp. I don't know how to explain it, but I just feel like there were some confusing aspects to it, and I don't know if I fully understood everything. The ending was very vague. To be honest, I don't really even remember that much of this book anymore. It's not memorable at all, and that is why I gave it 3 stars. The next one is The Woods All Black by Lee Mandello. This is another new release and another novella. This story takes place in the 1920s. Our main character is a trans man who is a nurse and is sent to this town to kind of help vaccinate the people there and kind of just assist in any way, specifically with like labor and delivery type of things. So being a trans man in this year, obviously they are kind of regarded as being a female, and like, why does this lady dress so weird and why does she present so masculine and just all of that type of thing, you know, classic transphobia of the 1920s. So while they are there, they end up meeting another trans man in this town, and the two of them kind of connect and have a romance together, but all the while the town is trying to drive Leslie out. They don't want him there, they don't want his services, and there's just a lot of weird things happening within the town and within specifically the woods in the town, and Leslie has a lot to uncover. For me, the best part of this book was the last 40 pages. I feel like the 80% before that is really just a lot of like setting the tone and setting the vibe and setting the aesthetics and the atmosphere of it. And I'm not hating on that. It just wasn't my favorite. I really liked towards the end when everything picked up, and it had a very, very unexpected element of it. So if you want to avoid spoilers, I will put the timestamp of where you can skip forward to, but I do need to speak about what happened in this book because I am still shocked. So if you're here for the spoilers, this other trans character, the romance interest, his name is Stevie, and he does this thing in the woods that allows him to then turn into a creature, and he uses that power to kill like the townsfolk that are, you know, really transphobic or really just preventing them from leaving the town together. But there is one scene where he like kills this towns guy, you know, good for him, rips him up, and then he goes over to Leslie, who is standing there watching, and Leslie knows that he's the creature, but then they fuck. And I was like, what is going on? Like, he comes over in his little creature form, and it's like, oh, he shoved his like big monster tongue down my throat and I could taste the flesh that was stuck in his teeth. And I'm like, that is so nasty. I don't know. I was not expecting the monster smut that happened at the end. And I'm not sure how I feel about it. I'm gonna be honest. I'm not sure how I feel about it. But the whole, like, shoving the tongue in the throat with the flesh in the teeth, and Leslie was like, it made me want to gag. Like, no shit. I don't know. I just had to get that out of my system because, like, what? Anyway, moving on. That was 3 stars for me, obviously. The next one I had an arc of. This comes out, I think, at the beginning of April, like April 9th or something. Let me look just to make sure I'm spreading the correct information. I was correct. This book is set to publish on April 9th, and that is The Age of Magical Overthinking, Notes on Modern Irrationality by Amanda Montell, who you guys may know is the author of Cultish, which was a 5-star nonfiction read for me. In this one, we kind of have a lot of different topics. The author speaks about different cognitive biases that affect our minds and the way we think, especially within the digital age. Amanda Montell covers a lot of things in this book: celebrity worship, toxic relationships, the overactive fight or flight response that plagues a lot of us in the year 2024 in the digital age. So there were a lot of really interesting things, but the title does say notes on, and that is what a lot of these were. Every chapter kind of covered a different cognitive bias, but it was kind of just the author talking about what it was. Well, I don't know how to explain this because, like, obviously that's what a book is, the author talking about something, but, like, it just didn't really feel like there was any sort of conclusion or anything to a lot of these essays. I feel like they just kind of felt a little bit incomplete, and then we go on to the next cognitive bias that she wanted to cover. There were some interesting things brought up, but overall it wasn't my favorite. I gave it 3 stars. I would still recommend it if it sounds interesting to you. Like I said, there are a lot of interesting things brought up in different cognitive biases, but I feel like it doesn't really go any further than that, than saying, like, oh, this thing happens today and, like, it affects these people in this way, and then just next topic. Some of the essays or notes or chapters or whatever I enjoyed a lot more than others, and that is why I gave it 3 stars, because some were really good and some just didn't really interest me at all. And my next 2 3-star books are both short story collections. This is where a lot of short story collections land for me because some stories are going to be really good and some are going to be not really good. So the first one was Some Possible Solutions by Helen Phillips. I have read The Need by Helen Phillips, and I gave it 5 stars. I really, really enjoyed it. I don't know if it would still be a 5-star today, but I do know that I really enjoyed it. It's like a sci-fi thriller. So I was really excited to try a short story collection and just get some of the weird sci-fi vibes, but it didn't really feel very heavy on sci-fi to me. It was just kind of more like speculative, like weird fiction. And to be honest, I don't really remember a lot from this. And I kind of feel the same way with this next short story collection, which is No One Will Come Back for Us by Premi Mohammed. This I was supposed to read in the New York Times Best Horror Reading Vlog, but my hold at the library didn't come in on time for me to read it for that, so I just read it outside of that on my own because the hold did come in a little bit later. This collection has 17 short stories that all deal with cosmic horror, Lovecraftian horror, a lot of talk about old gods and rituals and things like that. Once again, some stories were a lot better than others. I feel like the strongest stories for me personally were at the beginning, and then after the first few, it kind of went downhill from there, and a lot of the stories really weren't holding my attention or holding my interest, so that is why it lands at a 3. I really liked this author's writing style though, and I think I will pick up some of their like standalone or like full length stuff and just read more from that. Maybe I will enjoy that more than the short stories because I did like the writing and I did like a lot of the concepts. If you like cosmic horror, I would recommend this. Moving on, I had one 3.5-star book, and that was Death Valley by Melissa Broder. This book is about this woman who gets lost in the desert, and she finds this strange cactus, and she finds an opening on the cactus, and she goes inside of it. This story talks a lot about relationships with yourself and with others, love, grief, depression, mental illness, and I did enjoy it. I feel like I enjoyed the first half a lot more than the second half. I was really, really into it in the first half, and then the second half, it just kind of, I don't know. I feel like it didn't go like downhill, but it just didn't go up anymore from there. I guess it just kind of leveled out. It was kind of, had a little bit of magical realism, a little bit of weirdness, obviously with this whole cactus idea, but I just wish it got a little bit weirder. And I know that's like a personal problem. I like when things get weird, but I wish this really did get a lot weirder. And in the end, I enjoyed it. I like Melissa Broder. I love her writing, and I will continue to read anything that she publishes, but this one was just like, it was okay. Moving on to 4 stars now, I read Cabbage by C.S. Fritz, which is this random short story I saw on NetGalley. It was listed as a read now title, and I really, really loved the cover of it. So I decided to just go ahead and get it and read it. Our main characters are Thomas and Rosemary. They are a married couple, an older couple, and Rosemary has cancer. So Rosemary has cancer, and she has been in the hospital for a little while. So in order to make her feel better when she gets home, Thomas decides to complete their garden. She has always dreamed of having this large, beautiful garden, so he decides to work on it while she's in the hospital. So when she comes home, she is thoroughly surprised and very, very happy. But shortly thereafter, there is a weird accident that occurs, and the cabbage in the garden comes to life. I really, really enjoyed the writing of this one. I like the pacing as well. I feel like sometimes it's hard in a short story to get the pacing just right, but immediately I was connected to the characters at the very beginning. This whole weird cabbage thing happens pretty soon, and then the rest of the story follows at a really, really good pace, and I really liked the way that it went. I love weird things, and I think this was just absolutely perfect, like the perfect weird horror short story, and I would highly, highly recommend it. This is one of those short stories where if it was a full-length novel, I would still pick it up and read it because I enjoyed it that much, and that's always a good sign for me. My next 4-star was Blood Sugar by Sasha Rothschild. This is a thriller, and our main character we're following, her name is Ruby. She is a therapist, but she is also a murderer. She has killed 3 people in her lifetime. Now her husband ends up dead, and she is accused of killing him, but that is actually the one murder that she has not committed. So the book starts off with Ruby being questioned by the police, so we are immediately thrown right into the story, but then the story progresses and we get flashbacks of Ruby's past memories and the past murders that she's committed, and then we also flip back to the present and this trial with her husband's death, and I think that was a really, really smart way to tell the story. You definitely get to learn a lot about Ruby, why she is the way she is through her past memories, and I thought it was all fascinating. She was such an interesting character to follow, and the concept of this book was so interesting as well. I really enjoyed the writing, and this is probably one of the best thrillers that I've read in a while. I kind of went through a time where I just didn't want to pick up any thrillers because every thriller I was reading was just like meh, and this one kind of restored my faith. I will definitely, if this author puts out another thriller, I will definitely be reading it. I really, really enjoyed this one and would highly recommend. And lastly, my last 4-star and my last book for my wrap up is Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick, which is the novel that inspired the Blade Runner movie. This is a sci-fi novel that came out in 1968 and takes place in a future world, but it's really funny because that future world is now in the past for us. This takes place in like 2020, 2021, so it's really kind of funny to read about. But basically in the world in this book, there has been the creation of these non-human robots, but they kind of replicate humans like very, very well, and they have been sent to Mars, and a lot of them are coming back to Earth secretly because they are banned on Earth because of the destruction and war and death and everything that they can cause, but some have chosen to come back to Earth, and now they kind of have to hide among the humans. So we are following this guy who is a bounty hunter whose job is to retire or kill these androids, these robot people, and he kind of administers this test that tests for different things involving empathy within the androids. So the androids cannot pass this empathy test, and that is kind of how he knows if they're an android or not, and he can kill them. There are so many interesting concepts brought up within this book. Not only the whole empathy thing, but it's also really interesting because, like, in this world that they're in order to show empathy and, like, be a real human, it's like standard practice that every person on earth owns at least one animal. And if you don't own an animal, like, people look at you weird because they're like, how does this guy have empathy if he doesn't have an animal? So a lot of people that can't afford animals will go to kind of like not underground, but like secret companies that manufacture electric animals that are basically like the androids but for animals, so they look and function just like a regular animal. I don't know. It was just so interesting. And then I watched Blade Runner for the first time. I'd never seen that movie, but I watched it for the first time after reading the book, and I was really disappointed that there weren't any electric animals. Like, there was a couple, but not as much as was in the book, and I'm really disappointed by that. But overall, I really liked the book. I liked a lot of the sci-fi concepts and different elements. I liked the kind of philosophical, a lot of thinking points within this, obviously with empathy and what it means to be a human and feel empathy for other beings. I just thought it was all really, really interesting. I gave it 4 stars though. The one thing that I didn't like was kind of the sexism within the writing, which unfortunately is normal practice if you're reading a book from the 60s that was written by a man, especially if it's sci-fi for some reason. I don't know why. I think a lot of like male sci-fi writers in the 60s were like, we can be sexist to women because this takes place in a futuristic world and that's just how the future is. So I didn't really like that. The main character does have a wife that he cheats on, and then that never gets addressed again. Also, every female character when they're introduced, like, we have to know about their breasts for some reason. But aside from that, I really, really enjoyed this book. And that is all 25 books that I read in March, which is crazy. So that brings us to the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and hopefully I will see you next time.